You will not become strong by avoiding pain. You will not grow wise by staying safe. And you will not know victory until you taste defeat. Life will ask you to walk through the fire, not to burn you, but to refine you. If you're hurting, tired, or feel like a fool for trying, then good. You're right where growth begins. Welcome to Unlocking Wisdom, where we uncover the power within your trials, the purpose in your pain, and the path toward living a life of profound clarity, resilience, and truth. Now let us begin. I will speak to you plainly, not as a figure of history, but as a man who has stood where you stand now. A man who has watched dreams collapse, who has failed in public and in private, who has questioned whether all the struggle was worth it. If you've ever been humiliated by your own efforts, if you've ever thought, maybe I'm not meant for greatness, then listen closely, because you are exactly who greatness chooses, not the proud, not the flawless, but the persistent. Success is not born of brilliance. It is born of bitterness, of burdens, of falling so many times that your soul forgets how to count. And it is precisely in those falls that wisdom is born. You see, no one begins wise. You must first be the fool who tries too hard, believes too deeply, gives too much. You must be the one who misjudges, overcommits, loses what you thought you couldn't live without. And then, in the silence that follows, in the ache that no one sees, that is where the first seed of wisdom cracks open. I've lived it. I've led armies into battle and walked away with more loss than victory. I have spoken words with, certainly only to be proven wrong by life. I've doubted my own voice, and every single time, I thought it was the end. But what I didn't see then, and what I see so clearly now, is that failure was not a wall. It was a gate, a sacred, bitter, narrow gate. And only those willing to walk through it could reach the ground where wisdom grows. So I tell you this, do not despise your foolish seasons. Do not curse the bitterness you feel when nothing works and no one understands. That bitterness is holy. It is life stripping away the unnecessary, carving you into the shape of your calling. And if you can endure it, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, you will emerge as something the world cannot shake. But it requires honesty. It requires looking at your failures without flinching. It requires admitting where you have been wrong, where you have been reckless, where you have built from pride instead of truth. Because wisdom does not live in ego, wisdom lives in humility. It grows in the soul that is willing to learn, to bend, to begin again. So let's begin again right here, right now, not from strength, but from sincerity. Ask yourself this. Where have I been afraid to look? What pain have I been running from? What failure do I keep trying to forget? Because until you face it, it will run your life from the shadows. You must walk into the bitter places, into the foolish decisions, into the grief that still echoes in your chest. And you must go not to shame yourself, but to reclaim yourself. Because wisdom isn't about having all the answers. It's about knowing which questions matter. It's about being honest enough to admit, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. And in that willingness, in that surrender, everything changes. You stop clinging to the illusion of perfection. You stop chasing approval. You stop pretending. And for the first time, you start building something real, something grounded, something that cannot be taken from you because it was not built for others. It was built by your own hands, forged in your own fire. This is the beginning of your rise. Not the applause, not the mountaintop, but the moment you stop hiding from your own journey. The moment you say, this is where I fell, this is where I failed, but this is also where I rise. And yes, it will be slow. And yes, it will be painful, but it will be true. And truth, once it takes root in your soul, cannot be uprooted. It becomes your compass. It becomes your peace. It becomes your power. So if you feel broken, ashamed, lost, do not despair. That is the doorway. That is the path. Let yourself walk it, eyes open, heart raw, soul trembling. Because you are not behind. You are not unworthy. You are not foolish. You are becoming wise. You are becoming whole, and everything that felt like a dead end is now becoming your origin story. Walk forward. Let your bitterness become fuel. Let your foolishness become insight. Let your scars become maps. Because the world does not need more perfect people. It needs you, awakened, alive, aligned. And you, my friend, are no longer who you were. You are the storm survivor, the truth teller, the one who dared to stay when everyone else fled, the one who endured the furnace and now carries fire. So rise, not in haste, but in clarity. You were made for this, and your past no longer defines you. It refines you. Now that you've stood inside the furnace of failure, you must face the war that follows. It's not a war fought with fists of force. It's quieter, more dangerous, more subtle, and it is happening every day. Inside you, it is the war of voices, the war of doubt, the endless noise of your own mind battling itself. Because every dream you try to chase, every purpose you begin to walk in, it first must pass through the battlefield of your thoughts. And make no mistake, your mind will test you. It will replay the worst things anyone's ever said to you. And sometimes, it will disguise those words in your own voice. It will dig up your failures like fossils and say, "This is who you are." It will take your fears and dress them as logic. It will offer you comfort dressed as caution, distraction disguised as entertainment, and sabotage disguised as rest. And unless you reclaim it, unless you rise and say, "No more," it will quietly steal your life in inches. The most dangerous enemy you will ever face is not the one outside of you. It is the one inside of you that you haven't yet learned to confront. And so, I will say it plainly, you must reclaim your mind. Because you were not born to be at war with yourself. You were not created to be torn between your calling and your comfort. You were made to live in peace with yourself and power. But peace will not arrive by accident. You must create it. You must train your mind like a soldier. You must confront every thought that speaks of your limits and say, "Not true." You must interrupt the loop of negativity. You must break the addiction to doubt. And I know that is not easy, especially when you've lived years, maybe decades, trapped in mental loops that always lead back to pain, especially when trauma has etched itself into your nervous system, and every step forward feels like a threat to your survival, especially when you don't even realize how much of your energy is spent managing invisible thoughts that no one else can see. But hear me, you can take your mind back. You can rewire it. You can reset it, not overnight, not instantly, but daily, hourly, breath by breath. It begins with awareness, with listening to yourself not to agree, but to observe. It begins with asking, is this thought serving me? Is this feeling mine, or a story I inherited from someone else's fear? Is this voice truth, or is it just familiar? You see, many people confuse familiarity with truth. Just because you've believed something a long time doesn't mean it deserves to stay. Just because a thought feels safe doesn't mean it's honest. And if you want to rise, if you want to become the kind of person who endures failure and extracts wisdom from it, then you must question everything your mind tries to offer you from the place of fear. Because fear is not your compass. Fear is only a reaction. And you are not a victim to your reactions. You are the leader of your mind, not its prisoner, not its pet, not its servant. You are the commander. And your mind, it will follow what you consistently tell it to believe. So tell it truth, even when you don't feel it yet. Speak words that feel foreign, not because they're false, but because they're new. Words like, I am safe now. I choose. Power, not panic. I do not serve my old story anymore. I am not broken. I am building. And I know some part of you might roll your eyes, might say, that's not who I am. But that is not your voice. That is the residue of fear, of the past, of pain that got too comfortable. And it is time to evict it. You must retrain your thoughts like a garden. You cannot expect peace if you allow poison to grow unchecked. You must prune the lies, pull the weeds, plant new roots. How? With practice, with presence, with powerful rituals. Speak truth in the Mirror when your mind tells you to hide. Sit in silence and breathe when anxiety tries to control the pace. Journal your fears and confront them on paper. Flood your day with messages that feed your spirit, not your shame. This is not fantasy. This is neuroscience. This is healing. This is reclaiming the most valuable land you own, your mind. Because once your mind is free, your life begins to move. The road becomes clear. The fears become smaller. The choices become easier. And you become dangerous to anything that once held you back. So I will leave you with this. The world will try to convince you that strength looks like dominance, like noise, like control. But true strength begins with internal mastery. Not yelling louder than others, but learning to speak clearly within yourself. Not proving to the world that you're worthy, but reminding yourself daily that you already are. That is power. That is what makes you unstoppable. Not because life becomes easier, but because your mind is no longer your enemy. It is your ally. It is your compass. It is your friend. And together, you will build the life you were meant for. Now that you've stepped out of mental chaos and begun the process of reclaiming your thoughts, it's time to walk directly into the storm. Because clarity of mind means little if it's never tested. And test you, life will. I have seen many. Brave souls begin with fire, with passion, with the language of hope burning on their lips. But the moment fear roared, the moment failure pressed closer, they ran. Not because they were weak, but because they were unprepared to walk through the fire. Listen carefully. You will never eliminate fear. It is not a flaw, it is part of the design. But your relationship with fear can change. It must. You must stop treating fear like a signal to stop and start treating it as a summon to move. Fear is the guardian that stands in front of your next level. And if you want wisdom, strength, freedom, you will have to meet fear eye to eye and refuse to flinch. I know what fear does. I've felt it paralyze my breath before battle. I've heard it whisper that I will be forgotten, that every sacrifice would be wasted. I've watched it fill the hearts of men who once spoke boldly of revolution, only to abandon their post the moment the cost became real. And I've watched others who stood, not because they had no fear, but because they learned to walk with it. Hear this clearly. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that your mission is greater than your terror. So if your dreams scare you, good. If your next step feels like it might break you, even better. Because it means you're touching the edge of something real. And nothing worth becoming will ever feel fully safe. That's what makes it sacred. So now the question becomes, will you enter the fire? Not the metaphorical fire, the actual soul-stripping, truth-revealing fire. The fire of making that decision you've delayed for years. The fire of telling someone no when your identity has been wrapped in pleasing others. The fire of walking away from what numbs you, distracts you, shelters you. The fire of putting your full self into the world with no mask, no script, no backup plan, because that is where transformation happens. In the fire. In the heat of I'm not sure I'll survive this. You begin to meet the part of you that was buried under layers of protection. You see, you've been protecting yourself for so long from pain, from rejection, from loss, that you've also accidentally buried your power. And now it's time to dig it out, not gently, not softly, but with fire. Let it burn away the fake identities. Let it burn away the excuses. Let it burn away every lie that says, this is all I'll ever be. Because what emerges from fire is not what entered. What comes out is forged, hardened. Oh, yes, you'll feel the heat. But do not mistake discomfort for danger. The discomfort you're feeling is proof that you are alive, that you're stretching, that you're growing. Stop interpreting fear as a stop sign. Start seeing it as a gate. And remember, gates are made to be walked through. There will be trembling. There will be sweat. Your voice might shake. Your hands might doubt. But your soul will rise. And with every step you take into fear, it will get quieter. Not because it leaves, but because you outgrow its power. You begin to learn that most of the fear you feel is not about the event itself. It's about the story you tell yourself about it. Change the story, and you change the fear. Instead of saying, what if I failed? Say, what if this makes me stronger? Instead of, what will they think of me? Say, what will I think of myself if I don't try? Instead of, I can't. Say, I'm becoming. Because you are. You are becoming someone who no longer needs fear to disappear to move forward. You are becoming someone who does the thing anyway. Who shows up messy. Who speaks while shaking. Who tries again even with scarred hands and a trembling voice. You are becoming unbreakable. Not because nothing hurts you, but because nothing owns you. Because you've stopped running. And that, my friend, is the beginning of true freedom. I won't lie to you. Fear doesn't go away. But your response becomes different. Where once you froze, you now act. Where once you doubted, you now decide. Where once you needed proof, now you become the proof. And the world begins to shift around you. Because when you walk into fear, when you carry your truth straight through it, you send a message to life itself. I am not afraid to become who I am. And that message echoes. It builds momentum. It opens doors. Because boldness is magnetic. Power is contagious. And once you stop avoiding the fire, you begin to carry it. You walk differently. You speak with weight. You command space, not to dominate, but to remind others of their own fire. And you become someone whose presence is permission. Permission to live, to speak, to rise. So now the question returns, will you enter the fire? Not once, not twice, but as a practice, as a life. Will you choose the path that shakes you? Because you know it's the one that shapes you? I believe you will. Because if you've come this far, you've already started. The first flame has already touched your soul. Let it burn. Let it awaken. Let it free you from every illusion that said you couldn't. And then let it carry you forward. Because this is the fire that doesn't consume you. It constructs you. And the only thing it burns away is everything you were never meant to be. To this point, you've survived the furnace and stared down fear. You've taken steps others never dared to take. But now you must go deeper, not outward into more effort, but inward into essence. Because until your life flows from purpose, every victory will feel hollow, and every setback will feel like failure. Until you awaken to the reason you breathe, no amount of success will satisfy you. You will build, you will conquer, you will win and still feel the aching silence at night that asks, is this all there is? You were not made to just achieve. You were not born simply to survive. You were created to live on purpose. And that purpose, it will not shout. It will not compete. It will not demand your attention the way fear does. No, purpose whispers. It waits. It speaks in silence. It breathes through moments when you're alone. When the noise dies down. When your mask falls off and you remember who you were before the world taught you to forget. And if you never slow down long enough to hear it, you'll miss it. I tell you this not as a warning, but as a rescue. Because I've seen people win everything: titles, positions, money, admiration, only to collapse under the weight of a life that never aligned with their truth. I have seen men pretend for decades, speak words that weren't theirs, serve visions they never believed in, and behind the curtain of achievement, they were withering. Don't let that become your story. Don't trade alignment for applause. Don't climb a mountain only to find it's the wrong one. So now stop, breathe, turn inward. Ask the question you've avoided. What is calling me? Not what is expected, not what is approved, not what makes sense, but what calls you? What stirs your spirit even when no one sees? What do you long to do when no one is watching, when the pressure fades? When you can finally be honest with yourself, that's where it begins. That whisper, that gentle tug inside is not your imagination. It is your compass. It is the oldest part of you, the divine voice that existed before the noise, before the trauma, before the fear. And it's still there, waiting. You do not have to invent your purpose. You only have to remember it. You have to clear away the clutter of other people's expectations, of your own ego, of the false narratives you've picked up through pain. And when you do, Purpose returns not as a lightning bolt, but as a knowing, as peace, as a simple, undeniable clarity that says, this is it, this is mine. You may not know exactly how it will look, but you'll know how it feels. It feels like freedom. It feels like coming home. And yes, it will still involve effort and sacrifice and fire. But the difference is direction. Because when you live on purpose, pain is meaning. Suffering becomes seed. Every failure is part of your shaping. Every delay is part of your alignment. You no longer feel lost in your struggle, you feel guided. And that guidance, it cannot be manufactured. It must be received. So how do you hear the whisper? You quiet the noise. You remove the mask. You stop outsourcing your decisions to the world. You spend time with yourself, not scrolling, not comparing, not planning, just listening. Journal. Walk in silence. Ask hard questions. And then listen not for thunder, but for the quiet inner voice that says, there's more. That voice knows you better than you know yourself. It doesn't flatter you. It doesn't coddle you. It speaks with clarity, with firmness, and once you hear it, you can never go back to living a life that is not yours. That's what this moment is, a return to the origin, a sacred reconnection to what truly matters. Because here's the truth, the world will always offer you distractions. It will try to sell you 1,000 identities, 100 definitions of success, a dozen formulas to follow. But your soul is only one voice, and that voice, it is calling you home, to your real life, to your sacred design, to the path that will not always make sense, but will always feel right, and walking that path though it is narrow, though it is steep is where your power begins to roar. You will not walk it perfectly. You will stumble, you will question, but every step taken in alignment is worth 1,000 steps taken in performance. So listen, let the whisper become your map. Let it lead you not into ease, but into truth. And that truth will become your strength. Because nothing is more dangerous than a person on purpose. They do not flinch when rejected. They do not bend to fear. They are not ruled by applause. They are governed by conviction. And that conviction, it will carry you through storms, through droughts, through silence. Because you no longer need the world to tell you who you are, you know. And once you know, you cannot be controlled. You cannot be manipulated. You cannot be stopped. This is what the fire was preparing you for. This is why your thoughts had to be reclaimed. Because now, finally, you are ready to live as you were designed. Fully, authentically, powerfully. Not half awake, not barely surviving, but with eyes open, spirit engaged, and soul locked onto the direction that makes you come alive. This is your true revolution, not against a nation, but against numbness, against fear, against everything that has kept you asleep. And now, you wake. Welcome to purpose. By now, you've felt the pull of something real. You've walked through fear, reclaimed your mind, and finally heard the voice that whispers your purpose. But that whisper, if not protected and reinforced, will be drowned out once again by the noise of daily life. Because truth without discipline becomes a memory. Power without structure becomes chaos. You must build something strong, something that can hold the weight of who you're becoming. And that something is resilience. The kind that doesn't just get back up once or twice, but every single time. The kind that doesn't collapse when things get hard, but rises higher. And make no mistake, resilience is not a trait you are born with. It is a muscle you train every day through habits, through choices, through the smallest, most invisible decisions. You don't become unshakable by accident. You become it through rhythm, through ritual, through doing what needs to be done even when you don't feel like it. Especially when you don't feel like it. This is where most people fail, not for lack of purpose, not for lack of talent, but because they never train their soul to endure the ordinary days. They waited for lightning instead of learning how to build a fire. So now it's time to build your fire. You do it not by making grand declarations, but by choosing simple practices that you repeat until they become who you are. Start with your mornings. Stop waking up into chaos. Begin your day with intention, not reaction. Get up earlier. Not to be productive, to be present, to be with yourself before the world begins to pull at you. Move your body, even for 5 minutes. Still your mind, even for 3. Speak out loud the person you are becoming. Remind yourself what matters, not someday, today. Again and again and again. That is how you rise. And then, in the middle of the day when resistance comes, because it will, you don't run, you breathe. You return to your habits. You do the next right thing. And when you fail, because you will, you forgive quickly. You reset swiftly. You don't spiral into self-hate. You don't start from scratch. You continue. Because discipline is not perfection. It's devotion. And resilience is not avoiding failure. It's learning how to fail forward. I know this may sound like work, because it is. But the right kind of work frees you when you live with purpose. Discipline doesn't feel like a prison. It feels like a promise that says, I am building something bigger than my mood. I am becoming someone my old self would never believe. Because here is the truth. You do not need motivation. You need a system. Something that holds you when you're tired. Something that grounds you when the storm hits. Motivation comes and goes. But structure, that is your anchor. So build it, one layer at a time. Wake up earlier. Journal what you fear. Speak truth aloud. Create sacred routines. Say no to what numbs you. Say yes to what stretches you. Set boundaries like gates around your soul. Guard your peace like treasure. All of this is the architecture of resilience. And over time, it compounds. Over time, it shapes your identity. You stop being someone who tries. You become someone who does. Not because it's easy, but because it's who you are now. That shift from effort to embodiment, that is the difference between those who burn out and those who break through. You are not here to dabble in greatness. You are here to embody it. And embodiment only comes through consistency, through practice, through falling down and getting up so many times that you lose count and no longer care. Because it's not about keeping score anymore. It's about becoming. And becoming requires movement. Not massive leaps, just steps, real steps, every single day. Do you understand how powerful that is? You don't need the world to change. You don't need more time. You need a decision today to live differently, to stop waiting for perfect conditions, to stop asking permission to build your rhythm like a warrior preparing for war. Because every day is a battle against distractions, against self-doubt, against delay. But when you have structure, when your rituals are stronger than your emotions, you win quietly, repeatedly, without applause, without cameras. You win in silence until the results become so undeniable the world cannot look away. And if you keep going, if you keep building, something sacred begins to happen. You become someone others look to for strength. You become a lighthouse, not because you never break, but because you know how to rebuild. Not because you have all the answers, but because you've mastered your rhythm. And that rhythm, that sacred internal engine, is the difference between those who fade and those who last. So now, make the decision. Don't just chase purpose. Protect it. Build the habits that sustain it. Create the life that aligns with it. Let discipline become your devotion. Let structure become your strength. Let resilience become your identity. Because the world will try to shake you. But when you are anchored in rhythm, you do not break. You rise again and again and again. Until now, you've been awakening, piece by piece. You've gathered your mind, your courage, your focus. You've started to live with discipline, with purpose, with a fire that once seemed out of reach. But even now, right here, at this point in your transformation, there is still one final layer that must fall. It is the mask, and it's the hardest one to remove. Because you've worn it for so long, you might have started to believe it was your face. You cannot be free if you're still performing. You cannot lead a life of meaning if you're still trying to manage everyone's perception of you. I know what it feels like. The weight of fitting in, The ache of trying to be liked, accepted, understood. I carried it once too. For years I tried to be the version of myself I thought the world needed. But no amount of applause can heal the wound of self-abandonment. You can build an empire. You can master your morning routine. You can walk through fire. But if you are not you at the end of all that, then what was it for? So I ask you this, and I ask it without judgment. Are you living as the real you? Not the polished you, not the curated you, not the agreeable, quiet, pleasing version that keeps the peace. I'm talking about the true you, the one who knows what they love, what they hate, what they believe in, what they cannot tolerate. The one who's been buried under layers of shame, expectation, and survival. Because that is the version the world is waiting for. Not your mask, not your armor, your truth. And I get it, truth is costly. When you start to live it, you lose things. You lose relationships built on convenience. You lose approval that was never real. You lose comfort because honesty requires confrontation. But hear me, and hear me with your soul. Everything you lose in your pursuit of truth is nothing compared to what you gain. Because when you live authentically, you no longer need to keep up the act. You don't wake up exhausted by your own image. You don't shrink for safety. You don't numb for acceptance. You breathe, finally, in your own skin. You speak without rehearsing. You love without hiding. You create without asking permission. And that is freedom. But it doesn't come automatically. You must choose it. You must choose truth, even when it threatens to make you misunderstood. You must choose honesty, even when it costs your comfort, because your truth is your power, and your willingness to live it is what separates the awakened from the asleep. So how do you begin? You begin by telling the truth to yourself. That's the first war. Be brave enough to admit where you've compromised, where you've settled, where you've become small to stay safe. It will hurt, it will sting, but it will also free you. Then tell the truth in your relationships. Speak clearly, set boundaries. Say no when you mean no. Say yes only when it aligns with your soul. Stop living to be liked. Start living to be honest. Then tell the truth in your work. Do what matters to you. Stop building things you don't believe in. Stop chasing goals that mean nothing to your heart. Your time here is short, and every minute you spend pretending is a minute stolen from your destiny. Yes, people will not always understand. Yes, you might be called arrogant or difficult or crazy, but the ones who matter, the ones who are meant to find you, will be drawn to the fire of your authenticity, because there is nothing more magnetic than someone who is unapologetically themselves. They become a lighthouse in a world full of filters and fakes, and you were made to be that light, not by forcing, but by being fully, fiercely, freely. So stop apologizing for your truth. Stop waiting for permission to be you. This is your life. This is your breath. This is your moment, and no one can live it for you. No one can speak the words only you can say. No one can carry the message that was planted in your bones. That's what truth is. It's not just honesty. It's alignment. It's when your soul and your voice and your actions all speak the same language. And when you live that way, you become unstoppable, not because life gets easier, but because you are no longer betraying yourself to make life work. You are no longer negotiating your peace to keep the room comfortable. You are no longer abandoning your truth just to survive. You are living as you, and that version of you, the true one, is stronger than every lie you've ever believed. So now the final choice stands before you. Will you live in performance or power? Will you die pleasing or rise in truth? I say rise. I say choose the power of living without apology. I say let the truth cost what it costs and claim the freedom it brings. Because once you live like this, there's no going back. You won't fit into the old spaces anymore. You won't crave the same validation. You won't silence yourself to stay loved. You'll be too alive, too clear, too anchored. You will become a beacon, and others will see you and remember that they too can live free, that they too can burn the mask, that they too can speak from the depths, and that That is how we light up this world, one honest life at a time. There comes a moment, after all the rising, after all the rebuilding, when you finally look in the mirror and recognize who you are. Not the person you were forced to be, not the one who survived, but the one you were destined to become. That moment is now. Everything has been leading to this, not the peak of achievement, but the fullness of identity. You've faced your demons. You've walked through doubt. You've fallen and gotten back up. Again and again, you've torn down the lies, listened to the whisper, and lived from your soul, not your ego. Now there's nothing left to chase. Now you embody. An embodiment is different from trying. It's different from striving. It's the knowing that says, this is who I am now. No more proving, no more pretending, no more waiting. You live, you lead, you become. And this becoming is not loud. It's not flashy. It's quiet, sacred, powerful. Because the most unshakable people in the world are not the ones who shout. The loudest, they're the ones who are anchored in who they are. They walk into a room and don't need to dominate it. Their presence speaks before their voice does. Why? Because they've been forged. They've been purified by fire. They've walked the path most run from. And now, their authority is not borrowed. It is born. That is you now, not someday, not when the timing is perfect. Not when you have more money, more clarity, more confidence. Now, you are ready. Because readiness is not a feeling. It's a decision to stop delaying and start stepping, a decision to live every day as the person you used to only imagine, a decision to hold the posture of a leader, of a lighthouse, of a warrior of light, not because life is easy, but because your identity is settled, and the world, it won't always affirm you. It might still doubt you, still question your fire, still try to pull you back. But now you are no longer bendable by criticism or seduced by applause. Your worth is not on the auction block. You are not here for approval. You are here for impact. That's what this entire journey has led to. Transformation that does not end with you. Because when you become fully yourself, you don't just awaken your own life. You awaken others. You become evidence that freedom is possible, that truth can be lived. That peace can exist in a world of pressure. You become living proof that it's not too late, that wounds can be healed, that a person can rise again and again and again and finally stay standing. And when you stand, you create a new standard. You become the voice others remember when they are on the edge of quitting. You become the light someone else sees when their world is dark. You become the example, not by being perfect, but by being real. And the more real you become, the more unstoppable you are. Because nothing is stronger than a soul that has returned home to itself. Not status, not strategy, not even success. Because success without self is empty. But success with self, now that is power. So what does it look like to live this way, day by day? It looks like waking up and choosing to remember who you are, before the world tries to make you forget. It looks like honoring your boundaries, protecting your peace, and saying no to what drains you, even if others don't understand. It looks like showing up, not because you feel ready, but because you know it's time. It looks like speaking with conviction, walking with clarity, and giving your gift even when your hands still tremble. It looks like loving deeply, living loudly, and never again asking for permission to be what you already are. That is what the final ascent is, not climbing higher, but going deeper, not becoming something new, but returning to the truth that was always inside of you. The journey has never been about becoming someone else. It's been about remembering, about removing every layer of fear, of shame, of expectation, of distraction, until what remains is pure, unshakable, undeniable you. And now you rise fully, freely, finally. You are not half alive anymore. You are not waiting anymore. You are not doubting anymore. You know who you are. You know why you're here. And from this moment forward, you walk like it. You speak like it. You lead like it. You give like it. You love like it. Because there is no other way left to live. The old life has fallen away. The old you is gone, and in its place stands someone, born for this moment. Someone who is no longer bound by fear, controlled by doubt, or distracted by the noise. Someone who is whole, someone who is home. This is the final ascent, not into a title, not into applause, but into truth. And that truth will carry you through anything. Now rise, not just for yourself, but for everyone who still thinks they're too broken, too late, or too far gone. Let your life be the answer to their doubt. Let your voice be the sound of their courage awakening. Let your light be the spark that reminds them that they too can come home. Because if you did it, they can too. If this journey has spoken to your soul, don't let it stop here. Leave a comment below sharing your moment of awakening. Hit the like button if this message stirred something in you. And subscribe to Unlocking Wisdom to keep walking the path. To your highest self, the world is waiting for the real you. Let's rise together.